Oh, hey there. This is Crushed Celluloid, where we watch the movies that bravely soared where eagles dare and came crashing to the ground like a bad CGI plane effect. Today, we will be taking off with Air Force One, the 1997 Harrison Ford vehicle that has to do with the president's plane, if you weren't aware that Air Force One is the president's plane. But anyway, buckle in and return your seats to their upright positions, and I promise there aren't any corny plane jokes in the actual episode, and enjoy Crushed Celluloid's take on Air Force One.
So today we are talking about Air Force One, the 1997's answer to 1996's Independence Day, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it's a romp, I suppose.
There's a bit of romping about.
If it wasn't so fucking long. Oh my god.
It is. It actually. I mean, I remember seeing this as a kid. I think I saw it with my dad. We rented it on video. I remember really liking it, and he liked it a lot too.
Yeah, me too.
But rewatching it now, it still was enjoyable for the most part. But god damn, it drags out.
Oh my god, it will not fucking end. I remember I checked after a certain part, and I was like, okay, this movie must be approaching the 3/4 mark. And I looked, I was like, oh my god, we're at the halfway mark. Like, there's an insane amount of movie left.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of build-up to the action of it, which kind of drags it out some. And then pretty much the main bad guy dies when there's still like 25 minutes left in the movie.
Yeah,
so there's 20 or 25 minutes without the main bad guy in it.
Yeah, I was like, when he died, I was just like, I noted there are still 20 fucking minutes left in this movie. Like, this is nowhere near done. This is insane.
Yeah, and it drags it out to have, a big dramatic conclusion and some really kind of shoddy CGI work. Because this is a year after, the same year that Titanic came out, I guess.
Yeah.
Right around the same time. And, like, the big disaster sequence in that is fucking beautiful, but the one here, it's kind of shoddy. It seems like one of those, Sci-Fi Channel made-for-TV shark versus octopus kind of movies, like CGI usage.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't that surprised, but I was surprised they relied as heavily on CGI as they did.
And there are some scenes where it's not that bad, but just that main end crash sequence is just, very obvious.
Yeah, it gets... and it does. This movie, like the whole geopolitical thing, and just it gets.
There's a lot of that, and it's pretty boring. Like, if they focus more on the action and what was going on in the plane, as opposed to just all the politics surrounding the outside of that and what would happen if this situation happened, a lot of that was just boring as fuck.
Yeah, they thought it was a lot more interesting than it actually came off.
It's because they put the music there. They put that dramatic war room
music.
And here's something interesting about the music, is that it was kind of a rush job. Originally, Randy Newman was hired to do the score for this movie.
I know, I was gonna bring that up.
Oh yeah, but he was replaced last minute by Jerry Goldsmith, who kind of did it and everything like that. And the reason Randy Newman got fired was because the director, Wolfgang Peterson, who I'll talk about in a second, basically said that his score sounded a bit too campy. It was kind of almost like a parody of itself, to where he thought people would laugh at the movie. Which I could understand with Randy Newman at your help.
I could understand if I didn't find I guess what we'll call the presidential music that keeps repeating itself, if that wasn't so heavy-handed and campy in the end.
It really is. And again, like, even Jerry Goldsmith ended up saying that he'll never take like a last-minute job like that again, because I guess he was just like on his wits' end, just trying to score this movie at the last minute. I would love to hear the Randy Newman score of this movie.
There's bootlegs of it. That's what they said. There's bootlegs out there.
Ooh, I gotta find that.
Yeah, I hope it's just like a Toy Story type soundtrack. It's like, you got a president in me.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, man, I really hope that the reason he was fired is because, like, he did a score and it was all right, but he was just like kind of singing what was happening the whole time. It's like, presidents on a plane, gotta fight the terrorists.
He found the cell phone in the bag. Oh no, it ran out of battery.
Neither one of us can do a Randy Newman impression, but you get the idea.
Yeah. But anyway, tell me about the director. I'm excited to hear about this.
Wolfgang Petersen, who I kind of knew a little bit, but I didn't really know all of his work. Like I
don't really know him at all.
He wrote and directed Das Boot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's the guy that did Das Boot. But what I didn't know is one of my favorite fucking movies from childhood that I still love. He wrote and directed The Neverending Story as well.
What?
Yeah, he wrote and directed The Neverending Story. I had no idea, and I've seen that movie tons of times.
That's fucking wild. You would never guess if you had shown this movie back to back, like, hey, guess what? That's the same director.
Yeah,
never would have guessed that.
But I still love that movie to this day. But he's also, he directed a couple other good movies. Enemy Mine with Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. That's a pretty cool, like, science fiction film. Yeah. He also directed In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood, which is a really good movie. And Outbreak as well.
That's an alright movie.
The monkey was cute. But no, he pretty much after this movie, he actually had a pretty good like action movie career, even if most of them kind of sucked. But he directed The Perfect Storm and Troy and the more recent Poseidon, which I heard was god awful, and I'm not gonna watch. Even Kurt Russell said it was a piece of shit.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so I guess he's had a decent career afterwards. I'd say his career before was a lot better.
Yeah, he's like because he did a lot of foreign films, and Das Boot was his first one that kind of like crossed over, I guess, and gave him a little bit of recognition to where he could start working, in America and making American hits.
Yeah. All right, so anything else?
I did want to read off a couple of the taglines for this movie.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I got a couple. I just thought they were really interesting. The first one is Harrison Ford is the President of the United States. That's a given. It's kind of a given.
That's the whole tagline?
Yeah, that's the tagline. The second one I enjoy quite a bit. It's the most important man, the surest airplane, the most dangerous hijackers. The surest airplane was the one that really got me on that.
Yeah.
And finally, my favorite, to where I even had to write a little note next to it that said good one. It says, impenetrable, invincible, in trouble.
Oh, I dig it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's weird, like, you would think they would know how to market this movie by now. Like, this is such a trope-filled movie.
It is, and it was a huge hit anyway. It didn't matter. Yeah. Like, not only did it get a huge endorsement from President Clinton at the time, who saw it like twice.
Damn.
Yeah, he really loved it, but it was a huge blockbuster. It was one of the top-grossing films of the year. I think it did like $315 million worldwide, and like 172 domestic.
I mean, I totally believe it. I mean, this feels...
It did have an $85 million budget, though, which it kind of seems a bit high.
For 1997, I would actually say that seems kind of right. But this movie was very... This movie feels like Roland Emmerich in his heyday. Like...
I definitely see that, but it's not...
to Independence Day again.
Yeah, but it's not that special effects heavy. It's it's not even that action heavy or have there are some bigger sequences where they have a lot of extras and stuff like that, but it's mostly just like little airplane sets. And they use the same sets over and over again. It feels like a lot of this movie could have been made on the cheap. But of course, that's Harrison Ford in his prime, probably making a huge paycheck. And they had some other big stars in it as well, and I'm sure the director took a good chunk of that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of paychecks flying around in this movie, and I mean, it could have easily just been a B action movie.
It was definitely much more, and actually, it wasn't even originally written as a Harrison Ford vehicle. It was originally written with Kevin Costner in mind, which I think I would have fucking hated this movie if Kevin Costner had starred in it.
Yeah, no. Now I guess I'll go ahead and bring this up. Roger Ebert's review essentially says just that here I'll read it. Harrison Ford is one of the most likable and convincing of movie stars, and he almost pulls off the impossible in Air Force One. I don't mean he saves the day. I mean he almost saves the movie. Here is a good example of how star power can breathe new life into old cliches, and Air Force One is rich with cliches. And
it most certainly is.
Yeah, and Harrison Ford really does kind of save the movie from being dire. And Gary Oldman definitely.
Gary Oldman is so fucking good in this movie. I loved him in it.
My recurring note throughout my notes for this movie is Gary Oldman is killing it. Like, he is just constantly killing this role.
Yeah, I wrote Gary Oldman fucking rocks about 3 times in my notes.
Yeah, I would argue he saves the movie a little bit more than Harrison Ford does in hindsight.
I think the fact that the both of them are together and the 2 lead roles really does save this movie and bring it above what it should have been and what it was even written to be. Because Harrison Ford is, like Ebert said, one of the most likable fucking action stars ever. Oh, yeah. I love Harrison Ford. I'll watch anything with him in it. I watch 6 Days, 7 Nights, if that tells you anything.
I saw that in theaters.
Yeah, and you know what? Didn't completely hate it at the time just because I love Harrison Ford so much.
Yeah, I think that also kind of saved that movie. Yeah. We should do 6 Days, 7 Nights in the future.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
Oh, it's definitely coming. And
and Gary Oldman is fantastic in this movie. He's just a great actor all around.
Oh, all around.
And I think the same year is when The Fifth Element came out, or it was around the same time, and he was the bad guy in that as well. So he just like had 2 completely opposite roles playing the bad guy, but just knocked them both out of the fucking park.
Oh yeah, Gary Oldman he can just slip into whatever skin he wants.
Yeah, he is such a versatile fucking actor. Okay, so let's actually, we're about 20-something minutes in. Let's start talking about the movie itself.
Yes, okay, so we go through the opening. It's pretty standard.
It's kind of an opening scene. I will say I do love the sexy special ops lingo that they use. These are some of the lines that I noticed. It was like, "Low boy, this is Black Cat. We are hot. Copy." And the next one was, "Low boy, the package is wrapped." Just sexy, like special forces fun. Lingo. I like that.
Yeah, and we drop. There's a special ops team dropping into an embassy in Kazakhstan, I think is what it frames it as, and they're like, we see that, and it's a really cool scene. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, especially the jumping back and forth of night vision and regular vision. I thought that looked really cool.
It looked really cool, except at the same time, when they go to night vision, you assume it's from someone's perspective, but it's not filmed quite in that way. It's just filmed like there's a camera following them with night vision. Like, that was my one gripe with it, is it's not shaking like someone's running or anything. It's just kind of following them, like they had a night vision camera following with them.
Which is exactly what they did, but yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a documentary crew on every special ops mission.
There is where I come from.
That's the America I know. And so they kidnap what I thought was an ambassador. Turns out to be a Russian general. We'll get into that. And so they kidnap this guy. They fly him out. It's this really cool big action sequence. A lot of fun. Really standard action.
Good way to open the movie too.
Yeah. No, it was fun. I had a great time. And then we go to this political dinner in Russia, where the Russian prime minister, I guess, is introducing Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford gets up and he speaks Russian in the most lazy way I could ever imagine you could read Russian.
Oh, and only like 2 sentences too, and then he jumps back into speaking English. But something I noticed is like he's the prime minister is speaking in Russian, obviously, and then it's translating for all of the president's people that are there, and Harrison Ford kind of has like this little like headphone piece that he's kind of listening to the side and everything. And just watching that, I was like, I don't even think he's listening to the translation of that. I think he's listening to music or something, or trying to listen to a football game.
You know what?
Which could have been, because that kind of comes into play later. But then when he gets up and speaks, like, man, he's such a fucking party pooper. Everyone was so happy and excited and clapping, and then he just gets all serious. It's like he was maybe like listening to sad Tom Waits songs before he got up there or something.
Yeah, no, he sounds like he's on downers at first. Like, he does not sound like he's into it. He doesn't want to be there. We go from there to Air Force One. They're getting ready to take off. There's soldiers keeping back people waving, I thought, American flags, which I thought was really weird. There's this whole group of Russians that are just like, please, American president, look at us. Like, it's a weird conceit.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, especially like when he was driving out and his limo and stuff like that, it kind of looked more as if they were protesting. Like the ones that they were holding back with barricades, it looked more like they were screaming at him, like, get out of our country.
But no, I think they're waving American flags. I mean, I didn't investigate to any degree, but I thought that's what was going on.
Well, that's probably is what was going on. It's just some of them kind of looked more angry about it than they did like joyful.
Yeah, and Ford's talking to his people about we have this new policy of not dealing with terrorists, blah blah blah. That's his new thing. He just got him to stand for.
Well, which is funny because later on in the film, Dean Stockwell has a line when they're trying to decide whether or not they should negotiate with the terrorists on the plane, and he's like, "It's been America's policy for 25 years to not negotiate with terrorists." And I was like, weren't they just making a big deal about the fact that Harrison Ford said that?
Yeah,
that's our new policy. That's been the policy for 25 years, and why does anyone give a fuck about what he just said?
That is strange. I didn't catch that. Yeah, like, you didn't do anything new, sir.
Yeah, exactly. I just kind of made notice, like, it seems like America flip-flops on its policies whenever it's convenient.
I guess so. And there's some Russian journalists getting on the plane, and obviously, and there's this creepy music behind it. So you're like, oh, those are the bad guys. Obviously, the Russians are the bad guys.
And there's an A-list name actor with them, so obviously... We kind of meet his family, which, again, like, they're not very good. They're just kind of there to be a dramatic peg to use.
Yeah, pretty much. And Harrison Ford, I thought this was going to be a main plot point, that all he wants to do is watch the football game, and he keeps getting interrupted. But no, someone ruins the score for him. I was like, fuck, that would have been a great plot point.
I know, yeah, like during that he's trying to fight the terrorists, but no, he's still trying to catch a little bit of the game whenever he can.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out who won. No, I did think it was kind of funny that he kept trying to avoid it, and then, yeah, someone just gives away the score, and he's like, to be the president.
So, when we're first introduced to, or I guess when Harrison Ford first gets with his family, his daughter jumps in his lap. That looks like it would have really hurt his testicles if she had actually done that. But
and he's not a young stallion. That probably would have hurt either way.
Oh yeah, and so the line is they're talking about something. It's just like they're watching the football game. They're doing pass interference, and the daughter's like, "That's cheating." Harrison Ford says, "Only if you get caught." The girl, after a beat, says, "Why didn't you take me to that refugee camp today?" She is 12 years old, and she wants seems to mad, visit.
But I love her response to like why she should have been able to go. She's like, "I'm 12 years old. In caveman days, I would have been having children of my own by now."
That's such a crazy...
I was like, no, if it were caveman days, you would have gotten hit over the head and raped to have children by now.
And then you'd be impregnated.
Yeah, you're lucky you're living in this time. Enjoy being a child.
But how crazy that this 12-year-old wants to see a refugee camp? Why? Why would she want to do that? I mean, it's not even brought up later or anything. It's just... she wants to see human despair and misery?
I guess, well, it's even that kind of thing, and even the American mentality that we kind of had. She's like, but I see it on the news. And he's like, no, it's different on the news.
Yeah, it's not a landmark or anything. It's not like, oh, I went to the Congo and I saw that cool refugee camp they have there.
It sounded like she was going to take pictures. Like, she was going to tell all her friends about it when she got back home.
Yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I thought it would play later in the movie, but no. I mean, I guess it plays in the fact that she gets to see all this suffering firsthand and death and blah, 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 but...
That's kind of like a tiny, insignificant point to make.
Yeah, it was just... that is an odd line to write in. Whoever wrote the script, just what the fuck were you doing?
Well, I think that's what it was. I think maybe that was a grander idea, just like, oh, she wants to like grow up and see, stuff like refugee camps so bad. Yeah. But then this happens to her and she has to see it firsthand and she doesn't like it. But it's never really explored beyond that.
No, it's not played in that direction in any way.
No, it's more just those lines set up at the beginning of the script, like those kind of set it up like that's an idea, but then they don't come back to it really, other than the fact that she's there viewing all this throughout the movie. But it's not like told from her perspective. She's not like, she doesn't say anything about it towards the end of the movie. It just kind of falls flat.
Yeah. And so we get into the takeoff. We find out firsthand that there is a mole on the plane because Gibbs is that his name? I don't even remember.
Yeah.
He opens up like the gun locker that's on the plane and he throws out a smoke bomb, and then all of a sudden all of the Russians all at once just get up and start moving, where they're just like, okay, time to go. And they all start moving, and no one, like, because there's one guy, when they first get on the plane, there's a guy that looks at the Russians on there and they say, oh, there goes the neighborhood. Like,
that was a silly
weird, ethnocentric sort of fuck the Russians. And so no one thinks anything of these Russians all getting up and storming forward all at once.
Well, they do, because they immediately kind of start screaming and stuff, and people are like, oh, there's smoke, there's a fire on the thing. But yeah, they didn't...
no, that's it. No one starts screaming until the guy's like, there's smoke! And like, you just saw that? Like, it's been smoking for a good 30 seconds already.
Yeah, like, you're not worried about the guys that just went up and started grabbing guns and shooting at people.
Yeah, and this whole weird scene where there's a bunch of shooting. You can't really tell what's going on at all. Like, people are getting shot. You're not too sure who is getting shot.
But it's chaotic, like it would have been.
It's very chaotic. Yeah, yeah, that's true. It would have been very chaotic. And so they try and get the president out. They send him out, and essentially what is a thing that a space shuttle.
It's an escape pod.
Yeah, that looks like it comes off a space shuttle or something.
Which is funny. This is actually one of the features that actually was not on Air Force One at the time.
Really?
Yeah, no, because they actually got to visit it and everything, and the director was talking about it. I think this is in the DVD commentary, but he's saying like, oh, this is one of the things that they didn't actually have on it. I think they even made a statement like certain things are not actually on Air Force One, but he's like, I bet they'll have it in the future.
Then do they?
I don't know.
Fine.
I've never been on Air Force One. Fuck you.
You know, I'm disappointed.
I know. I should have been on there by now.
Yeah, and so the escape pod goes out. They wrangle all these people into the conference room. So there's like 50 people stuck in this conference room as the terrorists are getting a hold of the ship. The escape pod shoots out. We think the president's in it.
No, we don't.
Yeah, I mean, who really? I mean, I've seen the trailer. I know he's not in that escape pod.
Yeah, he wouldn't have just been out of the plane in the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Or 30 minutes. I don't know. This thing drags on forever.
Oh my god, for fucking ever. And what I like when they're going up to the cockpit, and Gary Oldman, he's trying to get in because they're trying to land, and they're about to do it. And Gary Oldman goes up to like the, I guess, navigator section that's right before a door before the cockpit, and he walks up and like these 4 people stand up. He's just like, get down, and he shoots one and then just kind of walks by as if the others aren't there. Like, it's another weird thing. Like, why didn't someone grab him and maybe try to get his gun? I guess heroics just don't exist in action movie standards.
That's kind of how it is. In action movies, if someone has a gun pointed at you, that's it. You're paralyzed, pretty much.
Yeah. So they get into the cockpit. The great scene with some horrible CGI where they land the plane, it's about to land, and they get it to take back off before like just running around like it turns a lot. It's a lot of physics that are very hard for a plane to do in general.
Well, it's mostly, I think, the camera shots that really fuck it up. Because, like, it does weird turns that do involve CGI because, obviously, they wouldn't have happened with the real plane. Yeah. But also just when the plane is taking off again, and it's kind of, like, trying to just miss that other plane that's on the ground, the way the camera moves is like, they're not going to fucking make it. They're right up on it. But then they're like, no, they have plenty of room. They don't even scrape it or anything. Which you would expect. You would expect it to fuck up a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like it's about to scrape. No, nothing happens.
No, it cleared it by about a good, 20, 30 feet.
Yeah, so we watch the president's pod goes down. There's the, I guess, red berets, because green berets wear green hats, but they have the berets on.
Yeah,
they're red.
So
they're I don't know.
Fancy forces.
Fancy forces. That's as much as we know. And the president is, surprise, surprise, not in the pod, because otherwise there wouldn't be a movie.
What I love about this scene, though, is, okay, so this happens, they go down and look for the president, and then they see the escape pod shoot out, so they're like, oh, he got away. So they leave. And then a lot of other stuff happens in the movie. It takes them a while to find the escape pod, and then they open it. It's not until right after they open the escape pod and see he's not in there that Harrison Ford decides to come out of hiding from the panel he's been hiding in since they first tried to look for him.
He has perfect timing. He's just like, this will be the most dramatic moment. I can leave this.
Exactly. He's like, I have a feeling they're opening the escape pod now. It's been about 45, 50 minutes. That seems about right. I guess I'll hop out now.
Yeah, and so Ford's back, and the wife and the child are up in the conference room. Gary Oldman already has his sights set on them pretty much to kill them. Whatever. He's in talks with the vice president. And the whole war room scene, which with Glenn Close, it's horrible. I hate the war room.
And I really love Glenn Close. She's done some great work.
Yeah,
she's just not really given much to do here, and I feel bad. Because she's a good name to have attached to this project. I love the idea of her as the vice president. I just wish her character was fleshed out more to where she had more to emote, or she was at least a little bit of a stronger character or something.
Yeah,
like that's what I was hoping, because I love the idea of her as the vice president in this movie.
Yeah, but she seems weak and timid about the whole thing, which just, while it's progressive, they want to portray a female vice president. It's not so progressive that they paint her in this just very stereotypically womanly light.
Yeah, she's very like indecisive and emotional and scared, and it's very bad. Not what we would expect from Glenn Close.
Yeah, and also being pushed around by the Secretary of Defense, the Dean Stockwell.
Yeah.
Like, pretty much he's almost...
And pushed around by the terrorist, but pushed around by Gary Oldman as well.
But yeah, pushed around by everybody. She
pretty
is
much.
She has no...
Moxie.
Agency. She has no agency about what's happening to her. But moxie, yes.
Yeah, she has no moxie.
She doesn't have any moxie.
I'm sorry, I never get to use the word moxie. I just wanted to throw it out whenever I can.
You know what? Good work.
I will say there is one good scene where when Gary Oldman first starts talking to his whole council and everything in the war room, and he basically is telling them, like, I have control of Air Force One, I have control of your plane, but he's just like, I have his wife, I have his child, I have his staff, I have his baseball glove.
His baseball glove, which is not even introduced in the first place.
Exactly, but it's funny, and he's like, if he wants them back, he'll have to negotiate. And I'm just like, oh, you best believe he's going to get that baseball glove back.
Well, that's the craziest thing, is you never even see this baseball glove he's talking about. It's mentioned in 2 lines in the movie and is never shown.
It had to have been cut out of the beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, we're getting into like 40 minutes in this opening scene before we get to any action. We should trim this back a bit.
Yeah, let's cut the baseball glove scene. But you know what? Let's leave Gary Oldman talking about the baseball glove. That'll explain it.
And again, there's no payoff. It's not like he gets back on the plane. He's like, oh, my baseball glove.
Yeah, or you know what? Before he leaves the plane, he's like, oh, wait, let me grab my baseball glove.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't give a fuck about that baseball glove.
Yeah, there's no emotional value attached to said baseball glove that they feel the need to repeat twice. So now Harrison Ford's out. He does this thing when he first gets out, which he goes to check on the rest of the plane. He's in the bellows of the plane, by the way. He's like in essentially the basement that's it's cargo carrying, and there's a parachute launch. And he has this scene that kind of, it's what he does for the rest of the movie, where he kind of sneaks a peek over this barricade to see the Russian, and then once the Russian looks at him, he hides real quick and like, no wait, that dude totally just fucking saw him. And a big conceit in this movie is that Harrison Ford is being sneaky, but every time he could easily be seen by what the camera is setting up.
Oh, most certainly. And the first thing I want to mention about this is that, he pops out of his little hiding space, and there's a guy coming down to, like, check out the area, so he has to hide. And then we cut to some other stuff, and then we cut to Harrison Ford coming out from the bottom. We don't see what the fuck happens to that guy that was downstairs. Like, it kind of comes back later to where I don't even know if it's the same guy, but a guy is, like, coming back from the other way, so I guess he just hid and then ran around him. But it's not really explained, and he looks a little beat up, like maybe he got into a fight, but it doesn't become apparent that happened, because he doesn't have a gun or anything, so obviously he didn't fight that guy for his gun. It's just, it's really fucking confusing.
Yeah. Like, why is he sitting on the stairwell where he is easily seen while this guy is still skulking around downstairs? It's insane. And then once Harrison Ford realizes that, he does the funniest little skip jump to get back to the back room. Where
That is really good. And I agree, like, the main thing that's kind of weird is before that happened, when he's kind of looking up at the guy that's guarding the hallway and he's trying to come up out of the thing, he is, like, looking every time the guy is facing him and walking his way. So, like, I don't see how the fuck he didn't get seen. But either way, he does do a funny skip jump over a dead body to, like, hide behind the door.
Yeah, to get back into his office. where oh my god, this movie is so hard to talk about. It's insane the amount of luck it takes for Harrison Ford to pull off what he's pulling off.
And just bad judgment to begin with. Like, he puts himself in some of these situations.
Yeah, but he comes out pristine. Like, we missed this moment earlier where Glenn Close is talking to someone before they know the president's actually back on board, and undefined black guy comes up to the vice president and the Secretary of Defense. He's like, and he has this very almost Rambo-esque line that if he's in there, he's the best we got. It's kind of funny. It's such an action movie conceit, and really, like, you find out that Harrison Ford was in Vietnam. He was special forces, blah blah blah.
And see, the funny thing is that they explain it away as like, yeah, I guess he won like the Purple Heart or the Medal of Honor or something.
Yeah.
But he was helicopter rescue mission, so it sounded like he was flying helicopters to go rescue people. Like, he wasn't in like tactics or special forces. He wasn't like doing the fighting. He was flying planes in and out of places to rescue people.
Yeah, I mean, he could just been part of that whole crew, like recon crew. Like, you have soldiers hurt, you have to go chase them or go deep in the bush to go get them. Blah blah blah. Like Forrest Gump. I guess
he could have been
kind
Forrest
of like
Gump.
that. Yeah. He's like Forrest Gump with Lieutenant Dan. He is the Forrest Gump of Vietnam, essentially. And so he gets into the office. He keeps skulking around the plane like a fucking moron. Like, and that's another big conceit of this movie, is that all the terrorists tend to centralize themselves in one room. Like, they have the hostages locked up, and then they keep like one person on guard most of the time, and that person is often distracted.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that seems silly to me, is that, you know, there are some CGI shots and there are shots at the beginning and end that are kind of bigger, but for the most part, it's like the same 5 sets they're using inside the plane throughout the entire movie. So, like, the sets didn't cost that much money, guys.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is, it's trying to be Die Hard, but at the same time, it is stuck in such a limited space that the conceit only works through these 3 rooms, essentially.
I guess, like, but the thing is, that is a huge fucking plane. There's so much space that they could explore and that he could actually hide in, but they all stay around this little central, you know, part of the plane.
Yeah, I mean, and when he skulks around on the main floor for the first time, you kind of get a sense of how big it is, but there's still this whole other section of the plane we never really see.
Above and below, there's so much of that plane that we never fucking see.
Yeah.
And it all seems to be connected within, like, you know, a 3 or 4 minute walking distance from any other place. But no, that is a huge plane. There are all sorts of sections and cabins that you don't even know about.
Yeah, they definitely could have expanded it, and without, I guess maybe they were trying not to push suspension of disbelief by trying to make the plane too big, but
it is a huge fucking plane. That's not really suspending your disbelief. That's just realizing that's a huge fucking plane. Well, but I guess I agree with you. I think they were trying to go Die Hard, so they were trying to stay to a few select locations that you recognize.
Yeah, and the physics of this are insane. So, and the scene where the guy first comes after him after he gets the football to play.
Yeah, he turns up the football game that he's been wanting to see the whole time.
Yeah, and he turns this chair around so you can't see what's in it. So the guy comes and, oh no, Harrison Ford's behind the other chair. Like, surprise, surprise.
How the fuck would you not see his feet or something?
Oh, yeah.
It is just silly, but the way that Harrison Ford takes care of him, he doesn't, like, break his neck or take him out of commission. He hits him with a stool, and then he just takes his gun and his keys and then leaves like he's not going to wake up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, and also the kerfuffle they are making was so fucking loud. Like, how is no one else in this plane paying attention to what is going on here?
Especially since it's all localized to these, like, 3 or 4 rooms that are all next to each other.
Yeah, this whole movie revolves around a conceit that all the terrorists are just going to stay upstairs, and 1 or 2 maybe down below. Even after they know that someone is on the loose murdering everybody, they still only keep to 1 room while everyone else is... Yeah. While they keep 1 or 2 people down below.
But it's silly. Harrison Ford, he gets a gun, he gets the keys, so he immediately goes and tries to free the hostages that they have in the conference room. Again, he just hit this dude with a fucking stool and then left him there like he wasn't going to wake up. So obviously the guy does wake up. He shoots at the door, or shoots at Harrison Ford and hits the door a couple of times. And then Harrison Ford has to like shoot him and then run away because everyone heard the gunshots all of a sudden. But there's a funny thing is that later on when he actually does get into the conference room, those bullet holes aren't there. They're gone. That never happened.
I didn't notice. Okay, so we get Ford skulking around the plane. The terrorist now know he's on there because of the bullet shot. And there's this scene where there's kind of some doors swinging in the background. And you're just thinking, oh, he's probably going to hide in there. But he's already fooled us with the chair gig. So I bet he's not actually going to be in those bathrooms. So all the doors are closed when the terrorists get there. They shoot them up, and then they slowly go through them. It's supposed to be a very tense moment, like, they open the door, they open another door. And then the third door, Harrison Ford's not there.
He jumps out of a fucking compartment that we didn't even see him go into. We don't know how it connected to anything.
No, there is no explanation. He comes out of like a secret hatch that is in the basement of the plane.
Yeah, now he's in the belly of the plane now.
Yeah, he was on the main deck. Somehow he gets to the belly of the deck through the bathrooms, maybe? Who knows? Yeah, he gets up in the belly of the plane. He's with the luggage, and he starts going through the luggage.
This is one of my favorite parts of the movie because this is where the action really happens. This is where it's just scene after scene of action. You get action shots of Harrison Ford looking through luggage. You get action shots of Harrison Ford reading instructions for cell phones. You get all the action you could ever possibly want in this moment. You get action shots of Harrison Ford trying to remember a telephone number. It's amazing.
I do love that dates this movie so much is he comes across a cell phone and a manual, so he has to start reading the manual immediately. Like, how the fuck do you work these things?
Yeah, which was really funny. But the funniest part of it is that it seems like it was framed as action shots because of the music that was behind it.
Yeah,
it was very fast paced, like da 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 action shots. But he was just like looking through luggage and reading a manual and trying to remember a phone number.
Yeah, insane. And so, I mean, as far as like the terrorist almost seem to forget about him after this point. They're just like, oh, that happened. Let's move on. Like,
well, they don't even realize it's the president anyway. They think it's some Secret Service guy down there or something.
Yeah, but they know there's someone loose on the plane that's killing people, and the next thing they do is there's a single person that goes down into the bellows of the plane again to seek out Harrison Ford, because Harrison Ford can only fight one person at a time in this world.
Obviously.
Because it's so limited in space. And so we get to this crazy scene where he gets through to the White House while he's being taken hostage by the Russian guy who almost has him. And he gets him to... And I actually really dig the scene. He
leaves the phone in his pocket and tries to talk to them while talking to the guy and not being too obvious.
Yeah, explaining to them like, hey, I need a shockwave kind of thing, and explaining to the guy. The guy's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Just keep moving. Like, that guy.
Yeah, that guy is a fucking idiot. He immediately should have been like, what the fuck are you talking about? Hey, let me pat you down and see what you're doing.
You know what? There's something.
Especially since he had a phone to his ear when he pulled the gun on him initially, and then all of a sudden that phone disappears.
Yeah,
put it in his fucking pocket.
I guess once a day, in the days before cell phone, he's a Russian. He's like, what the fuck is that? Fucking candy phone?
You trying to talk to Candy, President Man?
That's my best explanation of why he wouldn't just take that fucking phone from him.
Yeah.
And so Harrison Ford, once again, a suspension of disbelief, because they are making way too much noise down below. Like, gunshots being fired, but they're trying to deal with the Air Force One being thrown off course, I guess. And so no one thinks to check out this one solitary guy that was sent down into a cabin. Once again, all the terrorists have to stay located in this one top space.
Well, there's kind of a throwaway line about it, because there's a line where one of the terrorists goes, hey, has what's-his-face come back yet? And they're like, no.
No, we kind of forgot about that. Sorry. So, one thing I want to point out that we kind of passed up is Gary Oldman takes the first family, the wife and the daughter, up into the cockpit area. And
he does.
And he gives the daughter this little talk where he's talking to her. He's like, you know, your father is a killer. I can't do a Russian accent. And
that was
like,
horrible.
No, he's not. I know, it was really bad. And she's like, no, he's not. He's like, why? Because he does it with a telephone cord and a smart bomb? Like, oh, why not? Because he was in fucking Vietnam. He probably killed plenty of people there. Like,
yeah, exactly. That would have been a good thing. But I did like that line. I thought that line was actually kind of good, at least as far as his character's like motivations, because he seems to really fucking hate America.
Yeah, but then Gary Oldman has the creepiest scene with this 12-year-old girl that he goes in. And it looks like he's about to full on make out with this girl, and instead he goes in kind of towards her lips, and then just moves up towards her forehead, kisses her on the forehead, then sticks his finger out and just boops her on the nose. It is the cutest thing.
Because it's such an odd buildup, because he is like very creepy. He's like touching her leg and very close up to her face, and he's like getting angry that she won't respond to what he's saying, and then she does respond, and she basically calls him a monster and says, "You're nothing like my dad." And then he just kind of like thinks for a second. You think he's just going to go in and be like, oh, yeah, I'm not. I'm a creepy, slimy guy.
Yeah.
But no, he just like gives her a cute little kiss on the forehead and just boop. Aren't you a cute little poonum?
Aren't you just the cutest little thing? Trying to save your dad while I'm about to murder you. It's insane. And then
it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, so after this and after the whole firing to send a shockwave through the plane so that Ford can save himself, he gets locked in down below because now they realize, oh, there's someone down below. Let's lock them in so they can't wreak havoc up here.
Which they should have done as soon as they fucking found out that there was someone down there.
Yeah, and there's this cooler in the bottom that looks like a gas station cooler with a window that the guy got his head broken through. And Harrison Ford picks up a half gallon of milk and looks at it as if he's about to do something with it. Like, looks at it inquisitively. And then the scene cuts. That milk is never brought up again. He does not do a goddamn thing with that milk.
You want to know why? Because his thought was, when it thought like he had an idea about how to do something about this, his thought was, man, I really wanted some milk.
That was his
motivation. He got angry. He was like, "You shot my fucking milk. I wanted that milk."
You know what? Now it's personal. You can take my plane. You can take my family, but don't touch my fucking milk.
You can even have the fucking baseball glove that I love so much, but you touch my milk. You stop me from getting the calcium? No.
That's it. That's it. And so Gary Oldman, once again, just killing it this whole time. He takes one of the hostages and he puts her over the intercom so essentially Harrison Ford down below has to listen to her die, and he has to think that it's his fault that she's dying. And they unlock the
which again, this character we've barely met. She had about one line in the beginning, and just like, I'm his press secretary or whatever. I'm his lead press agent, and she kind of seemed like a mousy, upbeat. She seemed like a jerk. I don't care.
Yeah,
I didn't like her at all. I didn't care that she died.
So we get to the scene where Harrison Ford grabs a butter knife and proceeds to talk with someone on the phone about how to dump the fuel of the plane, and They walk him through. They're like, all right, if you cross the wrong wires, you're gonna shut down the plane. So first you cut this green wire, and then the phone cuts out, and all he knows is he needs to cross this green wire with another wire. And there's a green, yellow, red, white, and blue. And he's like,
that was such a corny fucking scene.
Oh, it was so bad. He's like, red, white, and blue, don't fail me now, or something like that. And so
it's like, I'm counting on you, red, white, and blue.
Yeah, I'm counting on you, red, white, and blue. And of course, it was the green and yellow. And so the fuel starts dumping, but for one, I don't know if it's because of this movie, but isn't it pretty common knowledge that Air Force One can refuel in the air? And also, Gary Oldman, as the main terrorist, doesn't already know that Air Force One can refuel in the air. He has to read it from the press kit. Where he's just like, I read your press kit. I can see we can refuel in the air.
So again, that lady that fucking got shot in the head just recently, good. She gave him those press kits. He wouldn't have known that otherwise.
Yes, you know what? She might as well have been a mole in the end. And so they get the fuel to dump, and then essentially Gary Oldman just reversed it, like, hey, refuel the plane, or I'm gonna start killing people every 15 minutes. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, again, that pretty much could have been cut completely because nothing came of it.
Yeah, I guess in the end it allows them to get to the hostages out, and I guess that's all they were really going for, because Harrison Ford, once again, there's this crazy scene, I don't even know how to describe it, where, okay, so these guys come down, they're trying to fix the fuel dump problem. Harrison Ford's shooting at them, they lock themselves in the closet. Harrison Ford gets behind the stairs, and one of the guys calls out in Russian. Harrison Ford, who says he studied Russian a little bit, calls back in Russian, ends up taking the guy hostage, and the other guys, when they come back up, they're just like, you okay? He's like, yeah. He just like nods away, and they go back upstairs, and once again, just one guy left to watch the majority of the plane.
Yeah.
Instead of 2 or 3 people, so they can watch each other's back. And that's how Harrison Ford gets the people to parachute so they can leave the plane. And it's pretty insane. There's this whole other side story. The facts, yeah. We'll skip it.
Which is actually, the whole parachute scene is actually pretty cool, and I thought that was a cool way to get the hostages off. Especially when the one terrorist does come in, and he's like, fuck, I can't get through the door. So he basically like uses an oxygen tank, and he puts it in the door and shoots it to blow it up, but then the cabin air pressure changes, and everyone just gets blown out of the fucking plane. It was awesome.
And so, after everyone's parachuted out, there's a problem because they're refueling the plane at the same time. The refuel plane ends up exploding, and the Air Force One has to turn around, like turn away from it to not get the flak. Blah blah blah. It's actually a really cool scene. I really like the way it blew up. Like very cool in a Michael Bay sort of way.
Or like you said, in a Roland Emmerich sort of way. That was kind of one of those Independence Day style scenes.
Yeah, it was like the White House exploding in Independence Day, just a very stylized explosion. It was cool. I enjoyed it.
Which, again, the thing that was kind of funny about that is that the reason the fire started was because the refueling tanker plane thing was refueling Air Force One, and then of course things happen and they drop down. And it basically started a fire because that was rubbing against the top of the plane, and it was spewing out gas, which caught fire, and then the tanker plane exploded. But there was also gas leading to their gas tank that was being... How come that didn't catch fire either?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would have just burned out, is the conceit. I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about gasoline or why any of this would happen in the first place to...
It was basically just so they could have a cool scene of an airplane exploding while Harrison Ford is hanging out of the parachute hatch.
Yes, and kudos, they got it off. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it did look pretty cool. I have to give it that.
I would have enjoyed this movie a lot more if it was more of that, and not so much of war room, boring, having to go through this whole political crisis.
And that is my main problem with the movie, because overall the action scenes, the whole Die Hard aspect of it, when he's kind of hiding out on the plane, taking down bad guys, all of that is very cool. And the relationship between Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman, especially when they get to them having scenes together later, is fucking fantastic. But it's just all the cut scenes to like seeing how, you know, the government is handling it without the president there. It's just boring and it drags out, and they're just talking about their options over and over again. And it might be kind of realistic at the time, but it's just fucking boring, and it's not what we want to see in this movie.
No, and it drags an hour-and-a-half movie to 2 hours that it totally should not have been.
It easily a 90 to 100 minute movie.
Yeah, that's about the amount of interest this movie has, is 90 to 100 minutes, and I would have loved it if it were that short. But watching it for 2 hours, it turned into hell. Just like, why won't you end?
It was basically a bunch of really cool scenes kind of coupled with a bunch of scenes I didn't give a fuck about and was bored as hell during.
Yeah. So after this whole parachute stuff, Ford gets captured, and we get the scene with him and Gary Oldman. It's pretty fucking awesome. Gary Oldman once again killing it, and
also killing Ford a bit. He's beating the shit out of him.
Oh yeah, he's like, you've been very busy downstairs, killing my men. That was some really bad Russian accents.
I thought it was spot on, actually.
You know, I'm gonna try my real Russian accent for this one. It's Harrison Ford. You don't want to do that. I'll kill the one. You pick. And those are the two lines I have. that was my Russian accent, real quick. It comes from Archer.
You pick, yes.
You will pick. You'll pick the one that dies. No. and it just. Oldman, one of his I don't even have any context for most of these. Like, stop with your fucking lies. Oldman saying it, and
it was a very good line though. His delivery in all of these is wonderful, and this is where we kind of discover his character's more what he's about, his political ideology, and why he is doing all of this crazy fucking shit that shouldn't have worked. How much he believed in his cause and how much he wanted that general to be released from prison.
This whole scene. Once again, the camera work works against the central action conceit. Is Gary Oldman throws Harrison Ford to the ground. There's broken glass, and Harrison Ford spies it underneath this thing. And the next thing Gary Oldman does is pull Harrison Ford up, but somehow he has that piece of shard glass that he was looking at.
He kind of gets pulled up, he gets knocked down again, and they're supposed to be like, oh, he got knocked down and picked it up, but it's not really shown. He just gets knocked down, and then he's thrown up against the wall. And this is the thing that bothers me about the camera work in this, is that, he has the glass now, and it's behind his back, and he's trying to cut his tape handcuffs off. Yeah. But if you actually see the whole layout of the scene, there are guys on both sides of him that are pointing guns at him and stuff that would see him doing that behind his back.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, is he just hiding it for now? Is this going to come into play later? And no, he was actually cutting the entire time.
He was cutting the entire time with these two people. They could see what he was doing because they're at that line of vision with him.
Yeah, and also, moving forward, Harrison Ford gets the tape cut, and he throws Gary Oldman over this thing. The guy with the gun is at least 10 feet behind him, could easily shoot forward. Instead, he steps forward,
Well, he runs at him, he wants to hit him with the gun instead of shooting him.
Yeah, and then he just, it all fucks up. Why didn't you just shoot him in the fucking knee? I guarantee he will be down after that. Why? It's fucked. The whole physical space they exist in.
It's all just cliche action movie conceits.
Yeah, and strange for a movie that's trying to get this geopolitical side so right that it's just going to give away these very easy action scenes to nonsense. This movie doesn't settle into exactly what it wants to be ever.
Exactly, and it's sold more so as an action movie. It's sold so much so as hey, it's the president on a plane with terror. It's Die Hard on a plane, but with the president. That's what it's sold as, and that's where the best parts of the movie come from. But half of it is just given to this whole political aspect of it, which is just boring and just kind of takes away from it to where it almost feels like the action scenes are just kind of tacked on or just kind of not given as much. Because even the camera work itself, the camera work in the action, the war rooms and stuff, that's some of the best camera work in the movie. Is just as it goes around the table and sees the chaos that's going on there, as opposed to just these shoddy action scenes that just kind of seem to be cut and sliced together in whatever way is convenient.
Yeah, it's giving way too much focus to what is not important to the movie. It's instead of just jumping into this action movie conceit, it tries to set up too much of a stage in the end that it doesn't need. There's no reason for that stage to be there. We get it. You want to make an action movie on Air Force One. Cool, go for it. Don't.
Well, and that's the thing. I think a lot of it also goes to this overly American sentiment. I think by the end of the movie, they're just wanting to be America, fuck yeah.
Because that's my last note, actually.
Yeah, because there's these scenes outside the White House with all these people holding up candles, waiting for the president to come back. Yeah. And there's just so much of this overly American sentiment put into it to where that's kind of what it's going for in the last third of the movie. Especially when it gets after even Gary Oldman gets killed, which we'll talk about. And it just kind of continues going, and it's just this.
It just keeps fucking going. Oh my god!
And it's just kind of this weird kind of sort of dramatic build, the pseudo dramatic build up to kind of be America, we survived, fuck yeah.
Yeah, but again, it does the whole Lord of the Rings thing. It gives you 3 logical endpoints and does not deliver on any of them. It just keeps fucking moving on.
Yeah.
And so after all this, Gary Oldman ends up tumbling down the stairs with Ford's wife, the First Lady, And I love that right after all this, like Harrison Ford's finally got control in the upper deck. His daughter first, like, just goes and grabs onto him, like, Daddy, like, go save your fucking mother. Like, calm down. You don't need to do this right now. Like,
yeah, you'll have your reunion scene later once all the terrorists are dead.
Yeah, she's like, hey, my mom's gone. And she's gone with the terrorist with a gun. Maybe I should pay attention to that. And so there's this whole scene down below, Gary Oldman and the woman. It's all right, and Gary Oldman is pretty much like, this plane's going down. Like, there's no way you can land it. I've won no matter what. And then
throwing off parachutes and stuff like that.
Yeah, whole scene, and Harrison Ford and him have this scuffle. Harrison Ford ends up wrapping this thing around while Gary Oldman has a parachute. And the worst one-liner I have ever fucking heard in an action movie.
But they had to have a one-liner there. They just knew, like, they had to have something. But yeah, it could have been so much better. And I think this is even, like, in the trailer, but maybe cut with a different shot of him, like an up-close shot. But I just remember that line, even from the trailer, just, get off my plane.
Yeah, I could that would definitely be in the trailer. But yeah, he says, get off my plane, pulls Gary Oldman's parachute, it chokes him. And
his neck snaps. You actually hear the snap.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
But then there is a cool shot after that of just kind of, like, outside the plane, and you just see Gary Oldman with, like, his neck limp, like, flying down in a parachute. That was kind of a cool scene. Yeah.
And so you think it would end there, but no, they set up that they have to have a landing scene. And so you're like, okay, we have to go through this plane movie conceit now. But that's not even it. Like,
well, that's the thing, is that they go through all this trouble to, like, for him to get in touch with the guy that knows the specs of Air Force One, and talking to him and just kind of being like, how do I land this plane? What do I need to do? So he talks to them, and then, like, he tells them everything, and then it's like, oh no, everything's going wrong with the plane. We can't land anyway. So you just wasted fucking 10 minutes just trying to tell me how to land a plane, that now we can't even see that scene, and now they have to bring in a whole nother scene where they go through this big action-y way to get everyone off the plane, which is cool, but if they would have cut it down a bit, it would have worked much better.
Yeah, we skipped over a little bit. I mean, it's not really important, but they're over Kazakhstan airspace. They get fighter jets to come after them. The American fighter jets come in and just to kind of take them out, but after
it's like a boring Top Gun during those scenes.
It's really bad. And so, in the mole, we had to point out the mole is still on the plane, because that's about to come up. So there's this whole thing where they're gonna get people out on a zip line with this other plane. They start doing it. The mole's helping out. The president's like, no, my family first. No, this wounded man first. Blah blah blah. And then it's like, okay, we can only get one more before the plane.
And it's down to 3. It's down to Harrison Ford, William H. Macy, and Gibbs the mole.
But him and Harrison Ford have this scene right before when it's the last person to go out on the zip line. It's taking longer than it probably should before it's just going to crash. But
by the way, poor William H. Macy. Just can't catch a break.
He has to be sacrificed. That's the plight of Macy. It's read my new book. It's coming out in the fall. And so Harrison Ford and the mole have this. Harrison Ford says, "I trusted you with my life," and the mole says, "So will the next president." It's like, wait, how are you going to explain that you got out instead of the president? Like, you are not about to get out of this that easy.
Yeah, I mean, he could have said, like, oh, the president was just like, you go, I'll sacrifice myself, because that matches his character. But still, yeah, the whole gun thing probably would have come into play.
Yeah, like,
and also, how the fuck do you know you're going to work for the next president?
Yes, it was weird, and so everyone gets in, and I love the jubilation scene where everyone in the war room freaks out, and then goes to the press conference, and there's this one guy that's kind of in center screen, just kind of throwing up his hands like, oh, like, he really doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. I noticed that, but it wasn't forefront or anything, but I just thought that was funny. I noticed that one guy.
Well, there's even that in the war room too. Like, they're kind of all together, and that one guy, and again, it's just kind of like overexcited, like young black guy, and he's just kind of like, "We got him back."
It's wild, and it pretty much just ends on this America, fuck yeah sentiment. Like,
it really, really does. But it's weird because with as many times as this movie could have ended and just kept going, it kind of then just randomly goes to a fade out Like after kind of an awkward moment, it just kind of fades out awkwardly. It's like, oh, okay, well that's where you're gonna end it. Like you're not gonna add a little something to kind of give closure to what you've been tacking on and tacking on.
Yes, they build this such a rich sub story to this movie that isn't necessary, and then they don't pay any of it off. They kind of give it all up in the end, just like whatever. We're just gonna end on a fade out. I mean, this movie could have been such a simple action movie and been 10 times greater if it just shaved off 30 minutes, got rid of the geopolitical shit, got rid of most of the war room, and just kind of
there could have been some of that, but it didn't need to be so present in the movie. And so much of like okay, we see a scene on the plane, then we cut back to the war room. And then we see another scene on the plane, and then we cut back to the fucking war room.
Yeah.
Which kept happening. And I will bring this up again during the scene after the end scene, like after Gary Oldman dies, and they're on the plane, and he's getting off the plane, and then the plane is like crashes with the mole, the bad guy in it,
with him in the fucking doorway on his hands.
Yeah, with the
knees,
doorway,
like, no!
And it even like it hits the water and then bounces up, and then you still hear him say something, so like he's still there, and then it's just this awful like anti-Titanic. Like kind of CGI scene of the plane flipping and breaking and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and it looks really awful. Like I said, very, very much like a Sci-Fi Channel original movie kind of effects.
Final thoughts?
I will never watch this movie again.
No, fuck it.
I really enjoyed it when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too. I used to play Air Force One in my bedroom.
Exactly.
I fucking loved it.
It was one of my diehard fantasies, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
But before when we talked about doing this, I was so fucking excited about watching this movie.
Yeah.
And then I started watching it, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely not as good as I remember. And then I got into some of the good action scenes and some of the good performances with Gary Oldman and Harrison Ford. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm still totally behind this movie. Yeah. And by the end, I'm just like, well, that's the last time I'm watching Air Force One.
Yeah, and once again, like you said, someone could condense this into 90 minutes and it would be the same fucking movie, just much better. Like, this movie dragged on for no fucking reason. It failed the action movie conceit that it was trying to go for. It tried to... I mean, do you think it's like a symptom of Independence Day? Because Independence Day had to explain a lot. But at the same time, it had a much more interesting plot going on than this did.
It did, and it did explain a lot, and it did have a lot of cutscenes and stuff, but most of that was actually good and talked about, actual characters, because most of the background characters in this movie don't get a lot to do. They're very cardboard. No. But in Independence Day, you look at people like, Randy Quaid and his family, or you look at the president and his wife, and like all very good, well-built characters that make you feel for those characters, as opposed to this that is just kind of like, oh, well, we'll tell you a line or two of dialogue, and you'll just have to, believe it, and just be like, yeah, you feel for him now, right?
Yeah, and I mean, a good example from Independence Day is Jeff Goldblum and his father. That is hardly set up at all, but his
they have a fantastic relationship.
Yes, and it gets it across in less than 3 lines. It's expertly written, and
you do just see Jeff Goldblum as a younger version of Judd Hirsch's character, and you see how alike they are, even though they're kind of bickery with each other. But you also feel the love they have for each other as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Independence Day is a great movie by any substantial amount, but
for a summer blockbuster action movie, it is on the top of the fucking list.
Yeah, extremely well made. Extremely well made. This is close to bottom of the barrel. Like, it could not have screwed up worse, in my opinion.
Again, and there are scenes I really like, and the performances are great, at least for, the main actors in it, and some of the background actors, but... It does, like you said, it just doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. If it had gone for a straight, action blockbuster, I think it would have done great. Or if it would have done it the complete opposite way and focused more on the war room and the behind the scenes, if this travesty happened, and been more of a political thriller, it could have also been a good movie. But it crammed those two in together and didn't flesh out either of those stories enough to really make it a good movie.
No, but at least we have Gary Oldman being a Russian.
We do.
That's the legacy of Air Force One, I think.
And you know what? He does almost as good of a Russian accent as you do. I think did you teach him? Did you teach Gary Oldman how to do his accent?
Well, no. I mean, I trained under him, but that's a dark period in my life. I don't like to talk about my time with Gary Oldman.
we hope that you enjoyed listening to that more than we actually enjoyed watching Air Force One. Next week, we'll be back, and we will be very excited for the Burt Reynolds spy extravaganza, Sharky's Machine. Well, extravaganza, it's kind of stretching it. Also, spy doesn't really describe it either. Well, anyway, we will see you next week here at Crush Celluloid.